My name is Kyra, and my life changed forever one fateful night. It wasn't the day I was fired from my job, or the day I found out my husband had been cheating on me. No, it wasn't even the day I had to leave our dream home, the one we built together. It was the night my family decided I was a lost cause. It's funny, isn't it? How the people you trust the most can hurt you the hardest. I had been struggling for months. My marriage was falling apart. My job felt like a dead end. And to top it all off, my parents, the ones who raised me to believe in hard work, responsibility, and success, were starting to give up on me. They had always expected me to follow a path. Get a good job, get married, have kids. I did everything they told me to. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't living up to their expectations. That night, the final blow came. "You've had your chances, Kyra," my dad said, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. "You've been trying to find yourself for years now. It's time to face reality. You can't keep living like this." I stood there stunned. The words felt like they were being thrown at me, heavy and unforgiving. They weren't just rejecting my choices, they were rejecting me. I didn't ask for much, just a little understanding. I had tried to explain that I was pursuing something different, something more than just climbing the corporate ladder, but they didn't see it. They didn't get it. "You're out, Kyra," my mother added, her voice barely above a whisper. But it hit me like a punch. "You've been living under our roof long enough. You need to get your life together. We can't keep cleaning up your mess." The sting of those words was too much to bear. I wasn't just being told to leave. I was being told I wasn't good enough. Not for them, not for anyone. I had one suitcase. One small suitcase for everything I owned, and nothing left but the broken pieces of a life I had tried so hard to rebuild. I grabbed it without a word, walking out the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of rejection threatened to crush me as I made my way to the car, my hands trembling. The world outside felt cold too. I felt like a stranger in my own life. The night was dark, the streets empty, just like the pit in my stomach. No one cared. No one understood. I was alone. As I sat in my car, staring out at the empty road ahead of me, my phone buzzed. A text from my husband, David. "I'm sorry, Kyra. I know I messed up, but I'm not the one who should be walking away from this." I laughed bitterly to myself. He was sorry? Really? After everything? After everything he had done? He didn't get to apologize. Not now. Not after he betrayed me. After I found out about the affair. My heart had already broken 1,000 times before, but this final blow, this feeling of being completely discarded, was worse than anything he could ever do. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and stared at the rearview mirror. For a moment, I considered calling my sister, or even my best friend. But I couldn't. My pride wouldn't let me. The loneliness and shame were too much to bear. I couldn't admit that I had failed, that I had nothing left. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, my mind spiraling, wondering what the next step could possibly be. What did I have left? I had no home, no family to turn to. And the one thing I had, my career, was a dead end. I was supposed to be successful. I was supposed to be someone. But instead, I felt like a failure. When I finally parked outside a small diner, I sat there for a while, lost in thought. The rain began to fall softly against the windshield, a quiet lullaby to my broken soul. That was when I remembered the lottery ticket. I had bought it months ago on a whim. I didn't even check the numbers. It had just been another thing. Something small. Something that maybe would make me feel a little less stuck. My grandmother had always believed in luck, and maybe I just wanted to believe in something too. I pulled out the crumpled ticket from my purse and checked the numbers on the app, half expecting to see the usual "try again" message. But as I stared at the screen, my eyes went wide. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The numbers matched. The jackpot numbers. $28 million. In that moment, I felt the world stop. I sat frozen, staring at the phone screen, disbelief washing over me. I had won. I had actually won. But even then, I didn't know what to do with this new reality. How was it possible that I, who had been cast out with nothing but a suitcase, was now a millionaire? I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell my parents what had just happened. I wanted to show them that I wasn't broken. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. I wiped the tears from my eyes and took a deep breath. This wasn't just luck. It was a second chance. But what would I do with it? The answer would come, but not that night. Not yet. But the universe had a funny way of showing me that sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what truly mattered. And my journey had only just begun. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache. The rain had stopped, but the weight of last night's events hung over me like a thick fog. I couldn't shake the image of my parents standing in the doorway, cold and resolute. I couldn't shake the feeling of my life, my identity, unraveling with each passing second. I glanced at my phone. The notification from the lottery app was still open, the numbers flashing like a beacon in the dark. $28 million. The thought made my heart race again. The irony of it all, being cast aside with nothing but a suitcase, and now I had more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But it felt hollow, like a hollow victory. What good was this wealth if I couldn't share it with the people who mattered most? I called the lottery commission to confirm the details. They walked me through the process slowly, explaining what I needed to do, but their words felt distant, like I was listening through a fog. The reality of what had just happened still hadn't fully settled in. When I hung up, I was left alone with my thoughts again. The life I had known was over, but what was next? What was I supposed to do now? I had no job, no home, and now I had more money than I could ever have imagined. But how was I supposed to reinvent myself after everything that had happened? I grabbed my phone again and texted Amber, my best friend from college. I need to talk. Her reply came quickly. You okay? What happened? I didn't have the words to explain everything just yet, but I typed out a quick message. I'm in a bad place right now. Can we meet? Amber had always been my anchor when everything else felt chaotic. We hadn't seen each other much in the past few months. Life had a way of pulling people in different directions. But now, I needed her more than ever. She was always the one who believed in me, even when I couldn't see my own worth. We agreed to meet at our usual spot, the small coffee shop near the park. As I sat in my car outside the shop, my hands gripped the steering wheel, my thoughts racing. I had no idea how to explain all this to Amber. How could I tell her that I'd been kicked out, that my life had shattered into pieces only to have it all come crashing back together in the form of a lottery check? Amber arrived soon after, her face lighting up when she saw me. We embraced quickly, and I couldn't help but feel a little comforted by the familiarity of her presence. What's going on? She asked, her brow furrowed with concern. You don't look like yourself. I sat down at the small table and tried to steady my breath. I don't even know where to begin, I admitted. Everything fell apart last night. My parents kicked me out. Her face softened and she leaned forward. What? Kyra, I don't understand. Why? They said I was a failure, I explained, my voice shaky. That I hadn't figured my life out yet. And that they couldn't keep supporting me. Amber's face twisted with confusion. But you've been working so hard with your jewelry. You're building something. Why would they say that? I don't know, I whispered, staring down at my hands. I think they wanted me to be something I'm not. They wanted me to follow their plan for my life, and when I didn't, they gave up on me. The pain was still raw, and it hurt to say it out loud. But as I spoke the words, a part of me felt like I was finally letting go of the heavy burden I had carried for so long. Amber reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, she said softly. But you're not alone. I've always believed in you, Kyra. You know that, right? I nodded, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill. I thought I was doing everything wrong, that I was just chasing some impossible dream. But then something happened last night. I I won the lottery. Amber blinked at me, her mouth hanging open. What? Wait, hold on. You what? I won $28 million. For a moment, the two of us just sat there, staring at each other in disbelief. I could see the shock in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, a flicker of possibility sparked inside me. You're joking, Amber said slowly. This is insane. I know, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't even know what to do with it. I have all this money and my world just got turned upside down. It's like I'm stuck in some sort of dream. Amber smiled softly, but there was a sense of seriousness in her tone. You don't have to figure it all out right now, Kyra. You've been through a lot. Maybe this is just the universe giving you a break. You don't have to carry all this weight anymore. I nodded slowly, trying to absorb her words. For the first time in a long time, the pressure in my chest lightened just a little. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the fresh start I so desperately needed. As we continued to talk, I began to realize something. The lottery wasn't just money. It was a symbol, a way for me to finally step into my own life, to live on my own terms. But the journey wasn't going to be easy. I would have to navigate the emotions, the relationships, and the changes that came with it all. But one thing was certain. I wasn't broken. And with this new beginning, I was going to prove to myself, and to my family, that I could be more than they ever thought I could be. I spent the next few days in a haze. My world had shifted in an instant, but I couldn't quite make sense of it. I had won millions, but that didn't erase the years of self-doubt, the rejection from my family, or the deep sadness that lingered in my chest. Every time I thought about my parents, I felt torn between anger and guilt. They had raised me to believe in the importance of stability, hard work, and following the rules, but I had broken all of those. Now, it felt like they were washing their hands of me, as if I was a failure they couldn't fix. I spent the mornings at a nearby coffee shop, reading through the fine print of the lottery claim process, and the afternoons on my couch, staring at my phone, too afraid to make the call to my parents. What would I even say to them? They had dismissed me so easily, but now I was the one with the power. I could change everything. And yet, the thought of rubbing it in their faces didn't sit right with me. This money should feel like victory, but all I felt was emptiness. Amber checked in on me every day, offering her support and encouraging me to move forward. But the more I thought about my parents' rejection, the more confused I became about what to do next. Should I confront them? Should I tell them I had won? Show them how wrong they were to doubt me? Or should I just move on with my life, completely severing ties with a family who never truly understood me? But then, something happened that forced me to make a decision. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when I received a message that shook me to my core. It was from my mother. Kyra, we need to talk. Please call us. We've been thinking about everything and we want to apologize. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My heart raced as a wave of emotion hit me. Anger, confusion, even a little relief. My parents were apologizing? For everything they had said? For throwing me out? For giving up on me? It felt like too much to process all at once. I didn't know if I was ready to hear what they had to say. Part of me wanted to just ignore the message and keep moving forward with my new life. But another part of me, one that still longed for their approval, despite everything, wanted to hear them out. Maybe they had finally realized the error of their ways. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the phone. Then I hit dial. The phone rang twice before my mother's voice filled the air. Kyra? Is that you? I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself. Yes, it's me, I replied, my voice shaky. We're so sorry, honey, my mom said, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. We know we've hurt you, and we can't take back what happened, but we want to make it right. We just didn't understand. We thought we were doing what was best for you." I stayed silent, listening to her words, unsure of how to respond. They sounded genuine, but how could I trust them after everything they had put me through? "We want to see you," she continued, her tone full of emotion. "Can we meet? We know we don't have the right to ask this, but we want to apologize in person." The request hung in the air, the weight of it settling deep within me. I had spent so many sleepless nights dreaming of this moment, hoping they would finally come to their senses. But now, standing on the edge of this new life, I wasn't sure if I could forgive them. I had my new future ahead of me. I had money, independence, the ability to live on my own terms. But at what cost? Could I really build the life I wanted without resolving the tension that still existed between us? I took another breath and answered, "Okay, let's meet. But I need some time before I can fully forgive you. This isn't something I can just forget." "I understand, Kyra." My mom replied softly, "We'll wait for you." I ended the call, my hands shaking. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I felt like I had been carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And now, just when I thought I could finally breathe, I was faced with a choice I wasn't ready to make. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. I spent most of my time reflecting on my past, trying to decide how much of it I was willing to carry forward into this new chapter. The money was a blessing, but it also felt like a double-edged sword. Would I let it define me? Would I use it to prove my worth to the people who had never believed in me? The meeting with my parents was scheduled for the following Sunday. I spent the entire day before it pacing, contemplating every possible scenario. Would they apologize enough? Would they even understand how deeply their words had affected me? And most importantly, would they still love me after everything had changed? On Sunday afternoon, I found myself standing in front of their house, my heart pounding in my chest. The house that had once been my home now felt foreign, like a place where I didn't belong anymore. But I was here, and I had to face them, face the people who had been both my greatest supporters and my harshest critics. I knocked on the door, and when it opened, I was greeted by my mother. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "Kyra," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. "Thank you for coming." I didn't respond immediately. I just stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressing in on me. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. But now I wasn't sure if it was enough. Would this apology heal the wounds they had caused? Could I ever truly move on from what they had done? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't the same person I had been when I left. I was stronger now. And whatever happened next, I was going to be okay. The following week was a blur. After my meeting with my parents, I felt like I had entered a new phase of my life. But the uncertainty lingered. I had allowed them back in, granted them the chance to explain themselves. But I still wasn't sure where I stood with them. How could I just forget everything they had said? How could I easily forgive them for kicking me out when I was at my most vulnerable? I spent the days following that meeting in a haze, focusing on the logistics of my newfound wealth. My phone was buzzing constantly with messages from the Lottery Commission, financial advisors, and even lawyers. Everyone wanted to talk to me about my future, about what steps I needed to take to secure my new fortune. And yet, amid all this, my mind kept drifting back to that moment when my parents apologized. It wasn't just their apology I was grappling with. It was the way they had treated me, the way they had dismissed me, believed that my dreams weren't worth supporting. But somewhere deep inside, a small part of me began to wonder, could I really move forward if I didn't let go of the past? Could I become the person I wanted to be without forgiving them? The thought terrified me. I wasn't ready to go back to the way things were, but I couldn't live in the bitterness that had consumed me either. I had to find a way to forgive. Not just them, but myself. That Friday afternoon, I sat down at my kitchen table, which had become my new sanctuary. The apartment I had rented was simple, but it felt like mine. The first time I'd truly been able to create a space for myself. It wasn't much, but it was everything I needed at that moment. I set my phone down and grabbed the pen and paper I had left scattered on the table. My business plans for the jewelry company I had always dreamed of building. The idea of building something real, something all my own, was what kept me moving forward. It was why I had spent so many sleepless nights designing jewelry, finding ways to make a living out of it. But now, I could do it without the financial strain that had once suffocated me. I had the freedom to build something beautiful, to show the world who I was. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages, eventually finding Amber's. "How are you doing, really?" it read. I smiled, appreciating her unwavering support. I typed back, "I'm figuring it out. It's been a lot to process, but I think I'm starting to understand what all this means. I'm not going back to what I was. I'm building something new. For me." Amber's response was immediate. "I'm so proud of you, Kyra. I know this is your time." And then something unexpected happened. A message popped up on my screen. This time from my father. "Kyra, we've been thinking. We want to make things right. Can we come to see you? We want to help. We understand if you need time, but we're here." I stared at the message, feeling my heart constrict in my chest. My father had always been the more rigid one, the one who believed that success came from following a clear, structured path. It had always been hard for him to let go of his expectations for me, to see my artistic side as anything more than a hobby. But now he was asking to help. He was asking for a second chance. My hands trembled as I sat there, weighing the decision. I could turn them away, continue living my life without them. I had already proven that I didn't need their approval. I had money, I had freedom, and I had the beginnings of a future that was entirely my own. But as I sat there, thinking back on all the times my father had worked tirelessly to provide for us, all the ways he had been there, even if his love was sometimes conditional, I realized something. I wasn't ready to walk away completely. Maybe it wasn't about forgiveness for them. It was about forgiveness for myself. I had spent so many years believing that I was never good enough for them, and I couldn't let that define the rest of my life. I texted back, "I'm ready to talk. Sunday, 2 p.m. The words felt heavy as I sent them, as if I were giving up a part of my independence in exchange for the possibility of healing. But I had to take this step. Not for them, but for me. To prove that I wasn't a victim of my circumstances anymore. The next few days were filled with a mix of emotions. I worked on my jewelry designs, focusing on making pieces that spoke to me. Pieces that were bold and expressive, full of color and life. It was a way of reconnecting with the part of me that my family had never truly understood. My creative spirit wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was who I was. And now I could fully embrace that. Sunday came faster than I anticipated. I hadn't decided what I would say to my parents, or if I would even be able to face them. But when the doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m., I knew that this was a moment I couldn't walk away from. I opened the door to find both of my parents standing there. My father was holding a small box, his expression unsure but earnest. My mother's eyes were red again, her face creased with the stress of trying to make things right. "I don't know how to start, Kyra," my father said, his voice quiet. "We're sorry for everything. We should have supported you. We should have listened, but we didn't know how to let go of our own fears." The weight of his words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so many years feeling like I was the one who needed to apologize, the one who needed to change. But standing here now, it felt like I had already done the hardest part, by walking away, by choosing myself. I stepped aside and motioned for them to come in. "Let's talk," I said simply. We sat in the living room, my parents on the couch, me in the chair across from them. The awkwardness was palpable, but for the first time in years, there was an openness between us. The barriers of pride and misunderstanding seemed to melt away as we talked. Really talked. For the first time in a long time. "I don't need your approval anymore," I said quietly, my voice steady. "But I do need you to respect the path I've chosen." My father nodded slowly. "We respect it. We do. We just didn't understand." "I know," I replied, "and that's why we're here now." The conversation continued, a slow unraveling of years of hurt, regret, and healing. And by the time they left, something had shifted. We weren't the same family we had been, but maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something new. And for the first time in years, I felt the freedom to be fully myself. It had been 2 months since I first won the lottery. 2 months of ups and downs, of transforming my life from one of doubt and insecurity to something that felt almost too good to be true. Every day felt like a new beginning, but with every new step I took, I began to understand the true cost of success. My jewelry business, Kyra's Creations, was flourishing in ways I never imagined. I had hired a small team to help with the designs and packaging, and the orders were coming in faster than I could keep up with. It was exhilarating to see my creations in the hands of people who appreciated them, people who understood what I was trying to build, what I was trying to express. But with the success came pressure. The pressure to keep up, to expand, to be more than just a jewelry designer. It wasn't enough anymore to simply create beautiful pieces. I had to be a businesswoman, a brand. I had to manage a team, negotiate with suppliers, and deal with all the logistics that came with running a company. I had been warned about this, the overwhelming nature of success, but nothing could have truly prepared me for the weight of it. It was one thing to dream of making a living doing what you love. It was another thing entirely to make that dream a reality and watch it grow beyond your control. It was on one of those stressful afternoons as I sat in my new office reviewing financial statements that I received a call that I had been dreading. It was from my mother. "Kyra, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "It's about your father." My heart sank. I had been slowly rebuilding my relationship with them, but it wasn't easy. My father still struggled to understand the path I had chosen, and there were times when he seemed to slip back into old patterns, questioning my decisions, my business, my future. I thought we had reached a place of understanding, but the way my mother's voice trembled made me afraid that something had changed. "What happened?" I asked, trying to stay calm, but my voice betrayed the anxiety that was rising in me. "It's your father," she repeated. He's not doing well, Kyra. He's been having trouble with his health, and we need to talk about what comes next." I felt a wave of panic surge through me. My father had always been the pillar of our family, the strong one. To hear her say he was struggling, physically, emotionally, brought back all the memories of the man who had once dismissed me, who had pushed me away in pursuit of his own rigid expectations. "I'm coming over," I said without thinking. I didn't know what else to say, but I couldn't sit here anymore. The weight of the conversation hung in the air like a thick fog, but there was one thing I was sure of. I had to be there for him, no matter what had happened in the past. When I arrived at their house, my mother met me at the door, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. "Kyra, he's been getting worse," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He won't talk to me about it, but I know something's wrong." I stepped inside, my mind racing with questions. What was going on? Why hadn't my father told me himself? Why had he been keeping this from me? I found him in his study, sitting at his desk, his back hunched over, his face drawn with exhaustion. He looked older than I remembered, vulnerable in a way I had never seen him before. He didn't look like the father I had once feared, but rather the father I had always wanted. "Dad?" I asked softly, approaching him. "Mom said you're not feeling well. What's going on?" He looked up, his eyes tired, but there was something else there. Something I hadn't expected. Regret. "Kyra," he said quietly. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been pushing myself too hard. The doctor said it's my heart. It's been giving me trouble for months, and I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want you to see me like this." The words hit me like a blow to the chest. My father, the man who had always been the strong one, the one who had told me to toughen up, to keep going no matter what, was admitting that he couldn't do it anymore. And in that moment, I realized something that shook me to my core. I had spent so much time trying to prove myself to him, trying to show him that I was capable, that I was enough, that I had failed to see the man behind the walls he had built around himself. "Dad," I said, my voice breaking, "why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me in?" He sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "I didn't want to burden you, Kyra. You've been through so much already. You've worked so hard to build your life, and I didn't want to be the reason you felt like you had to take care of me." Tears welled up in my eyes as I walked over to him and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Dad, I'm not a little girl anymore. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be honest with me. We can face this together." For the first time in years, my father looked at me, not as the daughter who failed to meet his expectations, but as an equal, as someone who could support him in his time of need. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift between us. I spent more time at their house, helping with my father's health and supporting my mother in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't easy. Old wounds were still there, raw and unhealed. But we were trying, and that's all that mattered. In many ways, it felt like a rebirth for our family. As I continued to build my jewelry business, I realized that this journey wasn't just about success or money. It was about healing, about coming to terms with the past and finding a way forward. Success, I was learning, was not just about what you achieved. It was about who you became in the process. And the more I worked to repair my relationships, to face the things I had been avoiding, the more I realized that the true wealth I had was not in my bank account, but in the people around me, the ones who had always been there, even when I hadn't been able to see it. As my business continued to thrive, I took the first step towards something I had never thought possible: a true reconciliation with my past. And with that, I found peace. The months after my father's health scare were some of the most transformative of my life. It wasn't just the growth of my business or the newfound wealth that changed things. It was the way my relationships began to shift. The walls I had built around myself to protect my heart, to shield myself from the hurt and rejection, were slowly coming down. I wasn't just rebuilding my career. I was rebuilding the trust and connection I had with my family. I had learned that true success wasn't just about creating a business or accumulating wealth. It was about learning to live authentically, to choose what was best for me, and to find peace in the process. I had fought for my dreams, but I had also fought for the chance to heal and forgive, and that made all the difference. My jewelry business was thriving. Kyra's creations had expanded beyond my wildest expectations. I was now designing pieces for high-end clients, even celebrities who wanted to wear something uniquely personal. It wasn't just about creating beautiful jewelry anymore. It was about creating a brand that represented me, my story, and my journey. But success wasn't without its challenges. Managing a growing business required sacrifices. I spent long hours in my studio, refining my craft, building my team, and navigating the complexities of being a CEO. But for the first time, I felt in control. I wasn't doing it to prove anyone wrong anymore. I was doing it for myself. One of the most rewarding parts of this journey was seeing the impact I could have on others. I had created the Margaret's Legacy Foundation in honor of my grandmother, who had always believed in me when no one else did. The foundation supported young women who wanted to pursue their passions in the arts, providing them with scholarships, mentorship, and the resources they needed to succeed. It felt right to give back, to create something that would help others find their own voice, just as I had found mine. But the true test of my transformation came when I received an invitation to an event that I never thought I would be part of: the prestigious Gala of Excellence, an event where the top entrepreneurs and philanthropists gathered. I had been invited as a guest of honor, a woman who had overcome adversity and achieved remarkable success in her industry. I wasn't sure what to expect as I walked into the grand ballroom, surrounded by people who had spent years building their empires. I had never been someone who sought the spotlight, but tonight felt different. I wasn't just attending this event as a guest. I was attending as someone who had fought for her place at the table, someone who had carved out her own path. As I walked across the room, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. I had earned my spot here, but the memories of being rejected, of being told I wasn't enough, still lingered in my mind. But as I looked around at the people there, I realized something powerful. None of these people had arrived at success without their own struggles, their own challenges. We all had our stories. We all had our battles. And tonight, it was my turn to share mine. As the evening progressed, I found myself surrounded by people who genuinely wanted to hear about my journey. The ups and downs, the moments of doubt, the moments of triumph. I spoke about the challenges of building my business, but I also spoke about the importance of forgiveness, of healing, and of learning to believe in myself, even when no one else did. And then, unexpectedly, my parents showed up. I hadn't invited them. In fact, I hadn't even mentioned the gala to them. But there they were, standing across the room looking out of place among the polished guests. My father, dressed in a suit that looked too stiff for him, caught my eye. He smiled at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw pride in his eyes. It was the same look I had longed for throughout my childhood, the look I had worked so hard to earn. But now, it wasn't about their approval. It was about me knowing my worth. I walked over to them, my heart pounding in my chest, but this time there was no anger, no resentment. Just a quiet, steady understanding of where we all stood. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm glad you came." My mother looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We're proud of you, Kyra, more than you know." "I know," I said softly, "and I'm proud of both of you too." We stood there in silence for a moment, surrounded by the bustle of the gala, but in that moment, it felt like time had stopped. I had come full circle, from the girl who had been thrown out with nothing but a suitcase to the woman standing before her parents, proud and at peace with who she had become. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and celebration. But as I stood on the stage to accept my award, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not for the money or the accolades or the business success, but for the journey, the hard lessons, and the people who had stood by me, including my family. They had been part of my story, and now they were part of my future. As I spoke into the microphone, I shared my story with the audience, about the challenges, the struggles, and the unexpected twist of fate that had changed everything. I talked about the importance of following your heart, of never giving up, and of always believing in yourself, even when it felt like the world was against you. And as I finished my speech, I looked out into the crowd, my heart full, and realized that everything I had gone through, the pain, the rejection, the uncertainty, had led me to this moment. A moment where I was finally standing in my truth, no longer defined by others' expectations, but by my own. The true victory, I realized, was not in the success I had achieved, but in the woman I had become along the way. And that in itself was worth more than any prize or recognition.